You're listening to episode number 1 of Liz's Healthy Table.
Looking for a healthy new way to feed your family without the hassle and hype? Welcome to Liz's Healthy Table, where your host, registered dietitian nutritionist Liz Weiss, serves up fresh and flavorful recipes with a tasty side of science, good nutrition, and fun. Are you and your family ready for some wholesome food that tastes great too? Don't change that dial. Your food adventure starts here.
Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Liz's Healthy Table. Liz Weiss here. I'm your host. I'm a registered dietitian, a cookbook author, food blogger. I'm a mom of 2 grown boys who have eaten me out of house and home for the past 2 decades. I'm the wife of a pescatarian, a former producer and reporter for CNN, and I'm just so happy to be here to tell you all about what's in store on my new podcast. And I really cannot believe it's show number 1, because actually from 2008 to 2016, I had a show that I recorded every other week called Cooking with the Moms, and I co-hosted that with Janice Bissex. We had a whole online platform called Meal Makeover Moms, and we retired it. And Liz's Healthy Table has been born, and I decided, since I love podcasting so much, that I would launch the new show. So I've done a lot of podcasts in my lifetime, 297 episodes to be exact, and now I'm starting with number 1, but I'm really excited. And so on today's inaugural show, I have decided to tell you a little bit about my journey in the world of nutrition and as a mom and a foodie. And I'm also on the show going to talk a little bit about what's in store. What can you expect from Liz's Healthy Table moving forward? And I'm also going to have a special guest on the show. My husband, Tim, will be on the podcast in just a few minutes. And somehow this guy wheedled his way out of being a guest on Cooking with the Moms. I don't know how he did it, but he's never been on. And so I thought, hey, what the heck? Why don't we have Tim on for a couple of minutes? So stand by for that. Anyway, so my website is called Liz's Healthy Table. And on the site, you can find all sorts of things. I've got a blog filled with a lot of recipes, hundreds of recipes, and many of them I brought over from Meal Makeover Moms. Many are new, and my goal moving forward is to give you recipes that are fast and easy, so something you can make for yourself or your family, but we're going to kind of weave in a little bit of adventure because, I've been working with families and kids for decades, and I'll tell you, I think everybody's eating habits are changing for the better. People are becoming a little bit more adventurous. So we're going to play around a little bit with recipes. And so you can find that on the website. I've also got the podcast, of course. I'll be recording this show twice a month. And when you go to my website, you'll be able to find the show notes from each episode. So if I talk about a specific resource or a cookbook or a special guest, I'll be giving you links to all of that in the show notes. So that's going to be a great resource for you. I also have fast-paced cooking videos on the website, which of course makes good nutrition all kinds of fun, checking those out. And social media, I'm on Facebook and Pinterest, Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. So I encourage you to stop by and follow me on all those social media platforms. You can engage with me that way. You can chat with me on Facebook. You can shoot me an email, liz@lizshealthytable.com. You can comment on a blog post or a podcast post. So there's lots of ways for us to dialogue. And the one thing I'm doing, which is really kind of cool, is that I have created a closed Facebook group. It's my podcast posse. Anybody can be in it. And this closed group is going to be like a little focus group where we will get together and talk about topics we're excited about. People can ask questions. I'll be doing some exclusive Facebook Lives for the podcast posse community. So if you want to be in that community, just shoot me an email, liz@lizshealthytable.com, and I'll invite you to join that group. Anybody is welcome. So before we officially get started, I want to thank my show sponsors, because really thanks to their support, I'm able to record the show and edit it and beam it out into cyberspace and make it available from my table to yours. So let's begin by thanking Bush's Beans. Now, whether you enjoy baked beans or black beans or pinto beans or Great Northern beans, the mealtime possibilities are really endless when you turn to convenient canned beans. So Bush's, I'm a big fan of theirs. I have been for years. You can check them out at bushbeans.com. And I will say I need to thank them for inspiring me to use a can of black beans to make a new recipe for sweet potato black bean chili, which is on the Liz's Healthy Table blog. It's brand new. So head on over and I hope you'll give that a try. And I'd also like to thank Super Healthy Kids. Now, we have been friends for many, many years. They were early on in the blogging days, kind of hand in hand with my former brand, Meal Makeover Moms, creating healthy recipes for families. So their blog at superhealthykids.com is packed with recipes and practical mealtime advice. So head on over to Super Healthy Kids, show them some love. So the really fun thing, I think, about the new podcast is that it's really not just about me. It's about all of us. Recently, I surveyed the moms and dads in my online community, and I had about 400 people fill out the survey. And one of the questions I asked was, what topics are you guys interested in? And so all sorts of topics popped up. Vegetarianism, how to feed my family when one person's a vegetarian, but then this one eats fish and that one eats meat. Like in my household, personally, Tim, who's going to be on the show in a few minutes, he only eats fish. He doesn't eat chicken or beef. And so how do we kind of manage that? So we're going to have a show all about that. A lot of people wanted to know how to get processed foods and sugar out of the family diet. So we're going to have a show on that with lots of practical tips and recipes that are naturally sweetened. So adding things like dates, dried dates, is a great way to add natural sweetness without actually adding sugar. We're going to do a show on seafood, how to get more omega-3s into your diet. So good for your heart, so good for your family. But what do you do if your kids don't like seafood? So we'll tackle that topic. Getting more fruits and veggies into the diet, meal planning, gluten-free, allergies. What's the deal with the new peanut guidelines that we're hearing about with babies? All of these topics we will tackle. And I'm always going to have a guest on the show. Sometimes a dietitian, sometimes a celebrity chef. So that's going to be something we can all talk about and work on together because, you know what, you might have a chef who you love that you would love for Liz to have on her show. Maybe I don't know that chef, but together we can reach out. Well, we could do a little Twitter, reach out to a chef and say, hey, you need to be on Liz's Healthy Table. Pay attention to her email request. So these are all things we're going to do together. So I thought it would be fun to have my husband, Tim, on the show, since, as I said earlier, Tim has never been on the podcast. So why don't we go ahead and welcome Tim to Liz's Healthy Table.
Hey, Liz.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
Good. Great to be on the show.
Yeah, finally. And just so everybody knows, I'm upstairs in my office/studio recording, and Tim is downstairs in the basement. So we're in separate locations under one roof. So I'm glad I finally invited you onto the show. It's been a couple of years, since 2008 to be exact.
That was quite a good track record by me, huh?
That certainly was. So why don't you tell everybody what it's like to be married to a registered dietitian? I'm married to a computer guy. I could tell you what that's like. You do come in handy from time to time, but what's it like being married to a dietitian?
Okay. So there's always two sides to the story. So the good side is we really do get healthy food on the table every day of the week. And for how long have I known you now? 28 years?
I'm only 32 years old, Tim. I don't know what you're talking about.
So, major diet upgrade for me after we started dating and then after we got married. So that's all the plus sides of being married to a dietitian. The downsides, what do I call you when we go out to dinner?
Oh, you call me a bully.
Yeah.
A menu bully. Well,
That's right.
that has nothing to do with being a dietitian. I think that has everything to do with the fact that I love every food on the planet with the exception of maybe 3 foods. So when I see a menu, it's hard for me to decide what to get. So what do I say to you every time we go out to eat?
I have to order what you want as well.
Right, so I can eat off your plate?
Exactly.
Years ago, I can remember a friend of mine buying me this joke gift. It's a fork, and it kind of like expands to be like 4 feet long, because every time we would go out to eat, I'd be like, can I have a bite of yours? Can I have a bite of yours? And she's like, all right, enough. So stop eating off my plate. So how did we approach mealtime then with the boys as they were growing up? Because you're a great eater. I know you ate together with your family growing up. We made that commitment here. What was it like feeding 2 toddlers, 2 little guys? Were they picky? Were they adventurous? What was it like at our table?
No, I'd have to say for the most part, meal times for us were fairly easy. I think we had, mainly thanks to you, got off to a good start and introduced them to the right foods early on. And so, from a food perspective, meal times were always easy and fun, right? We sat down together, we ate together, we chatted together, we talked about life, we talked about food, and we also put them to work as well. We got them to, set the table, we got them to help clear up. So it was great family time.
It is amazing when you think about something as simple as clearing your dinner plate, because sometimes when their friends would come over, and even to this day, not all the kids clear their plate, which I find interesting. And that's sort of become a habit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. No, I think we installed those good habits early on, and it really helped.
Of course, they did argue constantly, and you do egg them on, FYI.
Well, I think that's part of the fun of being a family, right? Especially when you've got 3 men in the household.
I call it the house of testosterone.
Yeah.
And
we had a lot of that.
And I'd be like, I cooked and I shopped and I made all this effort. Stop arguing at the table. And you guys always laugh at me. So that annoyed me. Still does, FYI.
Oh, we know.
I know you know. Favorite recipes? What are some things that you enjoy when I prepare them for the family?
Well, I guess towards the top of the list would always be the roasted vegetables. I hope my mom's not listening to the show, but you certainly are much better at preparing vegetables than we had in my household growing up. Somehow you make the vegetables taste sweet. And it's always a treat, especially on a winter day, to have fresh roasted vegetables coming out of the oven.
This is going to set you back with your mom. I can't
I know. I hope she doesn't listen to this.
No, I think we better not tell her about it. Oops. You're saying that you like my roasted cauliflower and sweet potatoes more than canned peas? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, don't forget the roasted Brussels sprouts.
Oh, yeah. Those are good. But you probably ate a lot of Brussels sprouts growing up, I would think.
We did, but they were
England.
mainly steamed. Right?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, and Tim grew up in England, in case you didn't pick up the little bit of accent there, which, by the way, I think has faded over the last 20 plus years, don't you think?
Oh, thanks to you.
Yeah, I know. Tim goes back to the UK and people say, where in the States are you from?
Unfortunately, they do.
Yeah, kind of sad. Let's see. Eating habits. Have your eating habits changed? You mentioned something about your eating habits improving after we met. What did you eat when you were a bachelor?
Well, I certainly, back then I wasn't a pescatarian and I ate a lot of meat. My diet before I knew you would have been less varied. I think I know we joke about that. And I was only cooking for one, so I probably had about 2 or 3 go-to recipes. Well, 2 of which probably included pasta because it was easy to make.
Yeah. You used to eat lots of bagels with ham and cheese.
Very easy to make. It was back then it was all about efficiency.
Not as many vegetables, I would imagine, although I think you've always liked vegetables.
Yeah, not as many vegetables. Salads. I didn't do too bad with salads.
Okay, so a little bit of an improvement.
Yeah.
Now, you became a pescatarian, which... I love fish. Tim and I and the boys love salmon. So we're kind of lucky. And oh my gosh, I have the best recipe for corny salmon cakes. Remember I made those recently for you and Simon?
Excellent.
Oh, delish. Yeah. And Simon and Josh, by the way, are fantastic eaters today. Josh is 21 and Simon's 18. So you can imagine how hungry they are constantly. I mean, it's so typical. Don't you think we'll have dinner? And then after dinner, you know what they say?
Yeah, what's for dinner?
What's for dinner? I'm like,
Yeah.
I just gave you dinner. You cannot fill them up, no matter how hard you try. It's impossible.
Yeah,
So, Tim, just to kind of wrap it up, anything else like you want to share with my listeners? This is show number 1. And for some people, they've been listening to me since 2008, since the first podcast. And for others, they're brand new to the show. Anything else without embarrassing me too much that you want to share about our life together and our food adventures?
So you're asking me to share a secret that's not going to embarrass you?
I don't think it has to be a secret, just an FYI. An
FYI.
FYI.
Well, it's interesting. What your listeners probably don't know about you is you actually love to camp and you love to cook out when you're camping. And I think those were great times when we first knew each other, that we would go camping and there was nothing more fun than cooking over an open fire. You remember that?
That's right. Lots of fun. I love camping out. And people over the years have always said, you camp out? Yeah, it's so much fun. Yeah, we had a lot of hilarious adventures. Remember, we were camping out, I want to say it was in North Carolina, and the people at the campsite next to us were really loud. Remember?
I certainly do.
So I told Tim, you need to go over and tell them to be quiet because, we're out in nature and they're partying and music and it just is going on and on. I'm like, you got to be kidding. I'm in a tent. I just want to go to bed. So Tim goes over to ask them to please be quiet. And what did they do? Do you remember?
They mocked me.
They mocked your British accent. Oh my gosh, that was pretty funny, but scary because you're kind of like in the middle of nowhere. You don't want to get into a fight with the people drinking a lot of alcohol on the campsite next to yours. So hey, but we're alive and well. And thanks for joining me on the show. Maybe you'll come on again in the future and kind of share an update or something. See how we're doing.
I would love to.
All right, Tim. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
So finally, Tim gets to be on the show. I'm such a nice wife, and I will have him on again. I promise. He can reveal some more deep, dark secrets about Liz Weiss. Why not? Hey, something I forgot to share earlier, and that is when you visit Liz's Healthy Table, and we can call it LHT. We're friends now, LHT. Why not? There's some cool things you can do when you're on the site. The first is that you can download my free ebook. It's a cookbook, Pasta, Pizza, Dinners, 7 nourishing recipes from my table to yours. That's a free ebook. The recipes are in the ebook, not on the blog, not on the website, anywhere but that ebook. So you can download that for free. I also have 3 coloring cookbooks on the website, and the coloring books are part of my new series, Color, Cook, Eat. And I have one coloring book, which is all about smoothie bowls. And so you get recipes and coloring pages, good for kids or adults. We've got another book, Color, Cook, Eat, Wholesome Family Dinners. So this is 10 recipes, 10 coloring pages, and activity pages for your kids, including a farmer's market scavenger hunt. Only $3.99, by the way, to download the books. I think $9.99 if you get all 3. Super fun. Coloring is really in for kids and adults. And then the third book is an alphabet book. So it is all about coloring the healthy foods. So A is for avocado, B is for blueberries, C is for carrots, etc. So check that out on Liz's Healthy Table. So just a little bit about your host, about me, for those of you who don't really know me. And that is that I grew up in New Rochelle, New York. So if there's anybody else out there from Westchester, say hi, wave, hi. And when I was growing up, my mom was like this most amazing cook. She's still a great cook. You hear this a lot from foodies. They grew up in a foodie household. And my mom was a home ec teacher. So she taught 2nd grade home economics. And I sure wish home ec was still in our elementary schools, because when kids learn how to cook, they are more likely to embrace eating a variety of healthy foods. So my mom was this home ec teacher. She was a great cook, and I hung out with her in the kitchen all the time. My 2 sisters were really picky. They literally lived on Jell-O and pancakes. And so to this day, I will never eat Jell-O, just as an FYI. Jell-O mold, Jell-O, not going to happen. So growing up in New Rochelle was a big, fun food adventure for me. And my mom used to make this baked ziti dish with ground beef and mozzarella cheese and pasta. Oh my gosh, we all loved it. We all ate it. And that is a recipe I kind of changed and tweaked to make a little more modern. And that is one of the recipes in the free ebook that's on my website. So I hope you'll check that out. Let's see what else. So I went to college to study nutrition. I knew from an early age I loved food. I loved nutrition. My parents had these friends from California. They were health food nuts back in the 70s. And I just became really enamored with them and with the whole nutrition conversation. And so I went to University of Rhode Island. I studied nutrition. Then I did my dietetic internship out in Portland, Oregon. So now I'm kind of all over the place, right? I lived in Oregon for a year and it was so beautiful, totally different from growing up in New York and going to school in Rhode Island. And then after that, I moved to Boston. So worked in Boston for a few years, got my master's in nutrition communications, and then I landed at CNN in Atlanta. So here I'm hitting up all the corners of the USA. Haven't done the Southwest yet. And so I worked at CNN, and there I was a producer and ultimately producer and reporter covering nutrition 5 days a week. So we had a daily nutrition segment and then a weekend program called On the Menu. This is 1987, people. I don't know if anybody listening was alive in 1987 or even like out of diapers in 1987, but I was working at CNN and this is before the Food Network. So we were really on the cutting edge of nutrition. And nobody was really as excited about food and nutrition back then like they are now. I feel like that's such a big topic of conversation is food. And, there were some good restaurants like Emeril Lagasse from New Orleans. He was sort of your top chef at the time, Wolfgang Puck. They were sort of early on in the celeb chef arena. And so it was great. So I've had an opportunity to cover a lot of nutrition news stories over the years. And then after living in Atlanta for 5 years, I moved to Boston, got married to Tim, went to the Cambridge School of Culinary Arts, where I studied culinary arts and cooked a lot. Let's just say I was not very good at pie crust to this day. Just never nailed that. I'm better at braises, let's say, than I am at making pie crust, but did that for a year and just freelance, did a bunch of stuff. And then in 2002, partnered up with Janice Bissex, another dietitian here in Boston, and then we founded mealmakeovermoms.com. And that's where I started to write cookbooks and started my blog and started the podcast. And so there you have it. It's been an exciting few decades in the world of nutrition. And now I've launched a new adventure, Liz's Healthy Table, and it's really about adding more adventure to family mealtime. And so that's what we're going to tackle and dig into on the podcast. And I will say too that all along, once my kids were born, Josh and Simon, I became quite the advocate for change here in my community. I live outside of Boston, and I noticed when Josh was in elementary school, now this is a long time ago. Remember, he's 21 years old. He's about to graduate college. But I noticed that in the cafeteria, they were selling some really unhealthy foods. So for example, your kid, kindergartner, you could go into the cafeteria at that time and buy quote unquote snacks. These were a la carte or extra items. So the parent would give the child $1.50 for lunch. That's what it cost back then. The child would go in and instead of buying the actual lunch, which I will say at the time was not that great, they would purchase some a la carte items. And those items might include a Hawaiian punch, a bag of Doritos, and ice cream. And I am not kidding you. That is what kids would eat for lunch every day, and the parents never knew it. OMG. If I could tell you, once I found out this was going on, I created the Healthy Lunch Task Force with a group of fellow parents. And together we started to advocate for some radical changes to take place in our cafeteria. Ultimately, we were able to get a new food service vendor to come in. We were able to get all of those a la carte items out of the elementary school completely, and then to clean them up, give them a makeover at the middle and high school levels. We were able to form a wellness committee and a wellness policy. And that started to kind of clean things up. So over the years, this is before Michelle Obama came onto the scene with Let's Move and before school lunch got reformed on a national level, we were working really at the grassroots level to improve the nutrition for all students in our community. And we're talking 5 elementary schools and 2 middle schools and a high school. It's a big school system. But yeah, oh man, I'm telling you, the Hawaiian Punch with the ice cream and the Doritos, I mean, it was just rampant. You know, they used to have recess after lunch. And what that meant was that kids would rush through lunch in order to get out to the playground. Now, if you had to wait in line 10 minutes to buy your lunch, because that was the scenario for a lot of kids, then you sat down to finally eat your lunch, your 20-minute lunch was over. So kids would just eat a few bites and then rush out the door. So a lot of food waste, a lot of poor nutrition. So I became a little bit of a squeaky wheel. I also did the same thing on the soccer field. Now, Tim, I should have asked him this, who was just on the show. He was the president of the town-wide soccer club at the time. And there was maybe 1,800 kids who participated. It was just youth recreational soccer. And the kids would play soccer on the weekends and during the week, and parents would bring snacks. Originally, it started with oranges that parents would bring at halftime. And somehow it morphed into this junk food fest after the soccer games. Now, mind you, we live in New England, and it's cold out, and it's rainy, and our springtime is not necessarily a beautiful, warm, and sunny affair. And so you would have kids that were just like shivering. But after the games, parents would bring Gatorade, which is full of sugar, and certainly the kids did not need it. They would bring Rice Krispie treats and donuts. I mean, it was ridiculous. So there was lots of litter left on the field. There was kids eating junk food. We're like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. So we started talking to parents, and we realized that most parents didn't want their kids eating junk food after this hour of wonderful activity. And so it just didn't kind of pair up, you know, physical activity plus junk food. It didn't make sense. So we worked with the community and worked with the soccer club, and we were able to get a guideline out to coaches and parents that said that, hey, you're welcome to bring a snack. Kids love it, but it needs to be fruit and water only. And that way there's no confusion, no argument. Kids love fruit. Everybody was happy. And so that's kind of how things worked out. So yeah, I was an advocate over the years. This is sort of before social media even popped up. So I couldn't share all this with you on Instagram back then, but that's something that I did back then. So I've always been really passionate about making sure that families eat delicious foods that are also nutritious. Because you know what? My philosophy is that if a food doesn't taste great, look great, smell great, I don't care how nutritious it is. If nobody eats it, it's not nutritious, right? So we want to make sure that those recipes really inspire and excite kids to eat a healthy diet. So that is my story. And that is the first episode of Liz's Healthy Table. So there's a chef out there. He lives in London, and his name is Yotam Ottolenghi. And Ottolenghi has written many cookbooks, including a book called Plenty and a book called Jerusalem. Just look him up. His food is flavorful. It's Middle Eastern. It is contemporary. It's incredible. And I love cooking his recipes. So I would like to have him on as a guest on Liz's Healthy Table. So I think together we might be getting in touch with Ottolenghi and encouraging him to join us. So I'm going to kind of plant that seed, and I want you all to be thinking about people, topics, things that you want to hear about on the show. We're in this together. I'm answering your questions every week. And so every week on the show, I will be including one of your questions. So you're part of the show. I'm excited that you're here. Just as a friendly reminder, feel free to head on over to lizshealthytable.com to download your free copy of Pasta and Pizza Dinners, to sign up for my newsletter. I send it out twice a month with highlights, what's going on the blog, on the podcast, just kind of keep you in the loop. I encourage you to join me on social media and to just be part of this community. So thanks for listening, everybody. I'm excited that you were able to join me on the very first episode of Liz's Healthy Table. Next week, we'll be digging into pasta and devouring modern Italian cooking. So be sure to tune in next week for that.